Hello. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the teachings of the Buddha. And I'm beginning with the quote, I am awake, which is reportedly what the Buddha said when he awoke from meditating underneath of the Bodhi tree for 49 days. And I think it's great because it references the whole idea of awakening to enlightenment, which is the prime directive of the Buddhist philosophy. So I want to emphasize that when we're talking about emerging religions, they are emerging out of something else. So Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, he was born a Hindu. He probably thought of himself as a Hindu throughout his entire life. It wasn't until after he died and his teachings were canonized and passed on that really what we think of as Buddhism began to emerge. So we're going to see so much overlap between Hindu ideas and Buddhist ideas. So hopefully you already watched the Hindu lecture to get some of those basics. So it might be a bit reductionist, but I'm going to go out there and say that the ideals of Buddhism really arose in response to the strict caste system, the social inequities, and strict discipline of ancient Hinduism. So, the short version of the story is that Siddhartha Gautama was born a prince in 5th or 6th century BCE. And before he was born, there was a prophecy that he would either be a great king or a great holy man. And his father clearly wanted him to grow up and be king. So he was shielded until the age of 29 from all the realities of the world. He was never allowed to see sickness, old age, or death. But when he's 29 years old, he convinces a charioteer to take him around outside of the palace, and he sees for the first time that life is full of painful things. So he gives up his life at the palace, including his wife and his son, and all the pleasures that he had as a life as a prince. And he explores the contrasting life of a Hindu holy man. He renounces food, he endures pain, crippling meditation, basically an asceticism that takes someone to the point of starvation. And what he decides, in as he comes out from his meditation underneath the Bodhi tree and says, "I'm awake," is he comes up with his philosophy of the middle way. And early on in his life, he wasn't sure if it was a good idea to teach this idea, if it was something that he should share. And his first attempts didn't go very well. But eventually, he does feel called to spread the teachings that become known as Buddhism. So, because Buddhism does share a history and a language with Hinduism, you're going to see a lot of the same words and quite a few of the same concepts, right? The idea of samsara, the cycle of reincarnation, which people can escape through shedding harmful karma and leaving the cycle of samsara to attain nirvana, is the same. Ideas which are new to Buddhism is that anyone can achieve Buddhahood, the ability to see the ultimate nature of the world, which undermines the idea of people being locked into a caste system. Also, the middle way of the Four Noble Truths, which we're going to look at in a moment, are new. Also new is something which is very difficult for me to convey. I've had multiple conversations with my friends who are Buddhists asking about the idea of the soul. So the idea of the soul, which we saw in Hindu culture with the Brahman and the Atman soul, doesn't exist in Buddhism. However, my friends have tried to tell me that there's kind of an essence that travels with a person in between incarnations, but not this conception of this kind of perfect soul. So the Four Noble Truths are one, that life is dukkha, which I think sometimes is mistranslated as suffering. So it's the suffering that's caused by ignorance, the grasping at impermanent material world, and not understanding that everything is interconnected. I did an online class with Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, and she explains dukkha as, even if you had everything, there's always something more to want. Like if you found a magic lantern on the beach, And you could have a wish, even if you didn't wish for something for yourself, you would probably wish for something like the end to world hunger, or you'd wish for world peace. There's always something more that people want, and that's the craving, which is dukkha. Thankfully, uh, Buddhism offers freedom from suffering, saying it's possible, and it's possible through following the Eightfold Path, which is the right view, uh, right resolve, right speech, action, livelihood, right effort, mindfulness, and concentration. So, the three jewels that you'll see referred to in Buddhism are the three elements which help you along in that path. And that is the Buddha and his teaching, the Dharma, which is the sacred duty and the practices, and the Sangha, which are the group of practitioners who help you along that path. In our chapter, we have some sections from the Dhammapada, or the Path of Truth, which contains sayings of the Buddha, and they're broken up into sections. So I love this section from 24 called Craving. This craving, this clinging overpowers the man caught in it, and his sorrows multiply like prairie grass fed by rain. Although it's hard to gain this freedom, sorrow leaves the man who overcomes this toxic craving, this clinging to the world, just as drops of water fall from a lotus leaf. I love that. I love that. The Dhammapada is lovely. They are kind of sectioned off little quotes. So I think the sections that we have in our book are really easy to digest because they are standalone pieces. So later on in the evolution of Buddhist thought, which our book kind of makes it sound like it happened on the same day, but later on, there is this growing idea of the Bodhisattva. So part of that is that through this idea that it's possible for people to attain enlightenment and Buddhahood during their life, um, a bodhisattva is someone who has taken the vow that once they realize they've reached that level of enlightenment and they can leave the world and the cycle of samsara, they make a vow to stay and in the world and help others. The technical vow goes something like they vow to stay until everyone else in the world has achieved enlightenment. So bodhisattvas are not these; they're not mystical people. For instance, the Dalai Lama is the 14th Bodhisattva of compassion. You may have heard of him. And part of what he preaches as part of the evolution away from Hinduism is Vipassana meditation, which begins with mindfulness and paying attention to the breath. We practice the ideal of equanimity, don't attach to your thoughts. So, as opposed to the dhyana meditation that I talked about in the Hindu lecture, this one is very much more about kind of centering yourself and being in this world rather than escaping the world. So, it's a key difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. So, if you're interested in learning more about Buddhism, I think probably the most accessible text I read is called The Book of Joy. It's a discussion between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It's mediated and written by Douglas Abrams, who's worked with the Dalai Lama over years, and I think is a great way of understanding the key concepts of Buddhist philosophy in the context of Christianity, since that's probably something that you're a little bit more familiar with. So I hope you enjoy our introduction to Buddhism this week.